Hello and welcome to the program. I am DEJI360. Now, it's been over a month since Nigeria confirmed its first case of COVID-19, and since then, there's been a spike in the number of cases. But it's not been all bad news, as a number of patients have also recovered and have been discharged. In fact, over 20 patients have recovered and have been discharged. The federal government has implemented several measures to contain the spread. Borders have been shut, lockdown orders have been imposed, and more testing laboratories have been equipped, among other things. Also, huge sums of money have been donated by corporates, wealthy individuals in support of the fight against COVID-19. Now, while we cannot disregard the effectiveness of all of that, everything Nigeria and other African countries have been doing so far as regards the COVID-19 pandemic is more geared towards containment than a final solution. U.S. President Donald Trump had hyped chloroquine as a possible cure that could tackle the outbreak of the disease, but scientists say it will require clinical trials to find out how effective the drug can be. In Nigeria, ex-INEC chairman and professor of pharmacognosy, Maurice Iwu, has raised hopes that he may have found a possible cure for the disease. In fact, he's presented a plant-based patented treatment to the Minister of Science and Technology, Dr. Ogbonnaya Onu, which is now being tested in the United States of America. Recently, the Oni of Ife prescribed a list of traditional herbs he claimed could cure the disease, and of course, that has sparked a lot of debate. The world is yearning for a solution, particularly in Africa, given the state of our health infrastructure. While the continent has so far been spared the number of infections and deaths that we have seen in places like Europe and America, there are fears things could spiral out of control in Africa if a vaccine is not quickly found for COVID-19. It then means we cannot afford to delay any longer. This is the time to act fast. All right, I'm now being joined on the program by Dr. Joseph Minari, who is a molecular biologist and the sub-dean of the Faculty of Science at the University of Lagos. He's joined us on the program from another part of Lagos. Also joining us from another part of Lagos as well is Dr. Tuyume Bawandu, who is a public health physician. Let me start with you, Dr. Minari. You are a molecular biologist. Is there a chance at all that we can come up with a homegrown vaccine or treatment for COVID-19? Because it appears what we've basically been doing across Africa is to copy what the West is doing. The West is shutting down. We're shutting down here. And everything we're doing has revolved around containment. We are not talking about, coming up with our own homegrown solution to this.
Yes, thank you. For now, I don't think there is any chance because as it stands from the angle of the government, they are just spending money for containment, which is also good. Probably that's the first step that you need to take. But they need to understand that we need to begin to develop our homegrown solution. It's as if in Nigeria and other parts of Africa, we are just waiting for the Western world to just come up with vaccine. And not only vaccine, even the treatment. And then one thing we must realize why, especially that is peculiar to this COVID-19, although not only most of the viruses, is that they have a genome, as a molecular biologist, they have a genome that has a tendency to easily mutate. The COVID virus, the curve is we call it RNA positive sensitive. That means it has from the RNA it can just translate. So the tendency of shifting of the genome is very, very high. And the implication of that is what they are working on in some other part of the country, is other part of the world, there's the possibility that it might not necessarily completely be applicable to what's going to happen in another part of the world. So that is why it's very, very important that in this part of the world, we should also begin to think about having our own grown solution of the vaccine or the treatment. Because as it stands, nobody's talking about it. We are just talking about containment. We are just talking about distribution of food. All the funds, we are just talking about distribution. So we are not talking about that. We are just waiting for them, that whenever their solution comes, that is when our solution comes. And I think this is a great lesson for us. development of vaccine takes time. No matter how they want to breach the protocol, to breach the bureaucracy of beating it, I don't think it can be less than 12 to 18 months before you come up with your vaccine.
And that is, and obviously we can't be waiting for that time.
And we can't be waiting for that time. So there are needs that to pump money into researches for treatment. We can also be looking for treatment of how we can go about, so that we can, to a large extent, those people that have been infected, we could be able to curb it before it actually escalates and goes beyond our control.
All right, Dr. Minara, I know you have a research you've been working on. We're going to talk about that shortly, but let me go to Dr. Mebaondu. Dr. Mebaondu, don't you think this is just an opportunity for Africa, at least for once, to step up to the plate, to rise and do something, not just for itself, but also for humanity? Because, look, the solution can actually come from here.
Yes, indeed, because honestly, we were in the right track those days. But right now, though it's heartwarming to see that quite a lot of business concerns and individuals were able to raise such amount of money within such a short period. But this is time now for us to go back to our research institutions to fund researches. The Nigeria Institute of Virology in Jos is there. Different universities are here, top-notch universities, and our lecturers are not that, inefficient or incompetent. So now I expect specific organizations, specific institutions, specific business concern to look at those, some of those institutions and put money down into research, especially those threats that can impact on public health. I have always advocated since more than 5 years ago that a future fund for epidemic preparedness should be set up. Because now when the epidemic hits, it's going to hit a lot of things, as we can see now. Not just the economic concern, it's going to hit the lifestyle of the people. And then that is not the time for us to start reacting. We should now learn how to be proactive. But talking about our own indigenous solution, we can only get that solution, one. Right now, we need to do a lot of massive testing, because what isolation will do for us is this. It will slow down the infection, one. Secondly, it will reduce pressure on the health system that is even non-existent in the first instance. So, but the gap between that is that we should pour our efforts into researches during that gap. We should do studies, we do researches, then we look at the drugs that can be, the combination of drugs that can be so effective in managing this thing. That would be the quickest win. Maybe 2-4 months we can get that done. Then, because vaccine is going to take time, we are talking about 12 to 18 months to develop a vaccine that can be administered to such a large number of people. So now, what we need to do is to come back and focus on research, and research. As we are treating this thing, we can see the experience in the Lagos Center now. We're discharging a lot of people, we're seeing at least some reasonable results. This should be the platform for us to research and even tell the world that here in Nigeria, this is how we do it. You can also copy us.
Another thing I want to ask you, Doc, sorry to interject. Another thing I want to ask you, we've seen quite a number of claims in recent times, of people claiming that they have their own, I don't know how to put it now, that they have their own solution, so to speak, treatment for COVID-19. We heard from the former INEC chairman, Professor Morris, who of course is a top professor of pharmacognosy. We've also heard from some other professors from other universities as well. Don't you think the government should perhaps, invite them to test whatever it is they have?
Yeah, interestingly, human beings cannot be used as guinea pigs. They all understood the process any medication, any drug goes through before it can be administered and approved on human beings. There are different, at least minimum of 4 or 5 different clinical stages where you do your small trial, you increase the number before you now say, okay, let me go and apply to this percentage of people. So for anybody that thinks he has any solution, they should be ready to go through those trials, because again, there are standards. We cannot use human beings as guinea pigs. So now, if you cannot strictly follow those scientific standards, then what are you then offering? Especially if you are trained scientifically. So we've seen this in nature, we've seen this in history. People now offering solutions to different things. At the end of the day, Even those ones that worked had a lot of side effects. It is very important that anybody that has solution must be able to subject it to critical scientific flow so that it can be accepted and can be sustainable.
Well, let me go over to you, Dr. Minari. Let's talk about your research. I know you were carrying out a research on something related to Ebola and, of course, coronavirus diseases. Could you expatiate more on that and what the challenge is for you?
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you. In University of Lagos, and in Faculty of Science, to be precise, we have clusters of research groups, which we also sometimes we link up with our clinical counterparts under Research and Innovation in University of Lagos. And in our own research group, in the Department of Cell Biology and Genetics under Molecular Biology, we look at the genome of the virus. Now, the virus has structural genes and also have accessory genes. So we look at those viruses, the virus in particular now, the COVID-19 virus in particular now. Now, we now studied the various, trying to look at the various, the structural genes, what they do, okay? And then in our research group, we are now saying as molecular biologists, now we look at the virus, we look at the expression of those genes. Now, most of the vaccines, they actually target the one of the structural, which is the S gene. We have the S gene there, we have the E gene, we have the M gene, and we have the N gene as part of the structural gene of the virus. Now, we looked at it and we are saying that in our own research, apart from, because the vaccine most of the time, we actually want to trigger the antibodies against the virus itself. But we are also looking at it from a molecular biology part of it, to also study how we can tackle it in terms of what we call docking. Docking the host so that the virus will not have access into the cell, because what the virus actually does is that it will mobilize through expression of those genes, get access into the host cells, and then convert the accessories of the host cells and then use it to replicate. So our research group is looking at how we can dock the receptors and preventing the virus from coming in. And if immediately you do that, the virus will not be able to have access to the host. And thereafter, you are almost certain that the virus, the power of the virus, definitely the body will take care of the virus. But we have quite a number of things we are working. We have a team, we have a virologist in our team, we have epidemiologists in our team, and other members of the team. But the major challenge we have, just like the doctor on the other side has rightly noted, is that, you see, because they have not been structured on ground, to focus on research. So that has been the problem. And so getting funds has been the problem. I've been trying, our research team have been trying, even before it escalated like this in Nigeria, we've had a proposal, and we've been trying to get grants even outside the country. But as it stands, all of them, it seems they've domesticated their own research grant. A particular research body contacted me from the United States, and they said, except we team up with their own research team in the university in the US, that they can't give us the grant. They actually try to follow up on me. But that's what we are saying. You see, most of the time, when we don't get grants from here, we write out our proposals, we link up with them, they take it up over from us, and then before you know it, something comes from it, and then we begin to import. So that has been our challenge. Like Doctor said, the way funds came all of a sudden, if we have gotten funds like this to actually promote research in this part of the world, I think, somebody was saying, where are the scientists in Nigeria? The scientists that nobody cared about before. Nobody cared about what we've been doing before. Research is not like Indomie that you just go to the kitchen and prepare, and within 2 minutes you come out. It takes a lot of thinking. It takes a lot of laboratory work. It takes a lot of analysis of results, and you also send out those papers so that it will be peer-reviewed. What they did in China is beyond locking down. People just say, they locked down Wuhan. No. What they did in China, apart from the locking down, they also ensured that researchers were coming up from different angles. It was so terrible it was so terrible that they were even publishing articles within 24 hours. They have standby. So when people do their research, they bring it, people just read it, and within 24 hours, it is published. And why they are doing that is to make information available. So when you make scientific information available, other people can pick it up and develop something from it. We don't even know the strain of the virus that we have in Nigeria. It's
very good you're talking about the strain, because I mean you look at what we have in Nigeria. Let's be candid. Yes. Not just Nigeria, across Africa, the number of deaths we have seen from the COVID-19 pandemic, it's so negligible compared to what we're seeing in other places in the West, places like Italy, for instance, Spain, the United Kingdom, the United States, as a matter of fact. So does it, is it a pointer that we might be having a different strain here?
Oh, it's a possibility. That's what I'm saying. You know, that's what I'm saying, that we are not sure. We are just doing positive, negative. We should know, like at a point in China, they discovered an L strain and they also discovered S strain. And then they discovered at a point that it seems the L strain is a little bit more aggressive than the S. You know, they were a little bit detailed. Some other people came on board to say, oh no, that maybe the L strain is just more frequent than the L strain, but in terms of the fatality, that probably they are the same. But what I'm trying to say is that that's what we should do. Do you know that there's possibility that because the virus has a tendency to probably adapt to a particular situation. You know, initially it was saying that maybe our temperature, the temperature in this part of the world is not supporting the existence of the virus. But because of the possibility of mutations on the of the virus, it's possible that the virus is also adapting to our own situation here. And so that's why we should know what exactly is happening. What is the strain that we have here? No matter how small, okay, no matter how small the mutation level is,
let me bring in,
we have an idea of it.
Let me just quickly pause you there. I mean, this is quite interesting, but let me just quickly bring in Dr. Mebaudu. Dr. Mebaudu, this is quite interesting. The fact is that even in the West, with what they are doing, even when they are trying to contain the virus, research is still going on simultaneously, but it's a different thing here.
I think it is very important. I will say this very clear and reiterate it. And I'm going to say it very slowly. Now, the weapon of warfare now, the new weapon of warfare, the military might of the future is not guns, is not the number of soldiers. It is the power of your public health system and the strength of your education. Now, because now what we are seeing in the world now is the deployment of intelligence, education, and health system. That will define a lot of things in the future. Now, if as a leader, you are looking at all these things playing out, you are looking at how, you know, even the so-called people that are not prepared for a threat, a biological threat, you know, where, you know, how they're succumbing. The economy is succumbing, the lifestyle is succumbing, the whole political system may even break down. Because if this thing continues to an election, nobody will come out. So now for us, the lesson should be that we should go back and invest in appropriate things. You can't do anything without research and development. You cannot go without even investing massively in your education and even the type of education. Let me give you an example. We see our president who go from sometimes and is going on a visit, or some ministers going on a visit to, say, Asia or America or Europe. Now, when they are going, they will pack all sorts of people that may not be really relevant to their trip. Why can't you bring the Vice Chancellor of University of Lagos, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Nsukka, some key eggheads? Follow me. Let's go and learn something, the way these people are developing their things. The information technology, the artificial intelligence, you know, this kind of critical learning, so that they know that you can now, you know, twin with them. There is twinning system. The twinning should not be just about building road, but about building intelligence and mental capacity of your institution, your thinking institution. So if we have seen that kind of thing playing out, that every time the president is going to China or going to America, you see those people following and trying to sign bilateral agreement between, say, University of Ife or Obafemi University and, say, China State Universities. Let me give that an example. You will see a lot of development in terms of our thinking, in terms of our capacity to do research. If we neglect this, we've neglected the development of our country. And then look at Africa, for instance. We have, of course, the African Center for Disease Control. But tell DEJI, what have they done since? What have they done? The African Center for Disease Control that was established and put in Ethiopia, what have they done? So now research, because normally they should be able to pick people from different universities, fund research. Fund research. If you don't fund research, if you don't build your health system, you don't support your education, you can't get much done. So here we are. We just hope that this will be a turning point where governance will be about what is in your brain, what you can do, how much you can invest in your science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Without this, you're not going anywhere.
Now, let's just quickly take a short break. When we come back, I want us to discuss the issue of stigma, associated with the coronavirus pandemic and why it's important for survivors to begin to come out to speak. Stay with us. We'll be right back. On DEJI360, we don't just ask the questions. What is wrong with amending the Constitution the way the National Assembly members have been doing it? We seek answers.
Constitution is constituent. Our problem is not lack of laws. Our problem is lack of the willpower to implement our laws.
Answers that provide clarity.
While we negotiate, we should try to make it a point that the girls must be complete.
The clarity you need to make informed judgment so that you can make the right decision and take action. People are saying it is you politicians that are responsible for this, that you are the reason why this is happening.
All these dollars that call themselves governors in this country.
I wish we had people like Tony at the National Assembly.
God forbid that I go to join that band of
DEJI360, providing clarity to issues.